Lord of the Rings basically had an incredibly good first day. It scores record ratings for Amazon Prime Video. In that it had $25 million viewers for its premiere, which is insane when you really think about the servers it would require to actually to house that. So it says, Lord of the Rings of Power premiere last Thursday scored record viewership ratings for Amazon Prime Video. The streaming service had reported that 2 episodes were watched by more than 25 million people in its first day, which spanned 240 countries and territories across the world.
Are they saying they retained 25 million to the second episode?
I don't know. They don't. I think what they're saying is between the two, it equals out to 25 million.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, that's kind of cheating,
so
but, impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a lot still.
Yes.
That's still a very high number. So it says, the service reported the first 2 episodes were watched by... Okay, so it says, it is somehow fitting that Tolkien's stories, among the most popular of all time and what many consider to be the true origin of the fantasy genre, have led us to this proud moment. Remember that article we covered a while back where we said that they were going to make this... they were going to say it was successful no matter what?
Yeah. The marketing ploy is... It's a big success regardless of the ratings.
Doesn't matter.
Now, they've even suspended their rating system.
Yes.
The biggest mistake I see in this is that they failed the show with the marketing for it. And then now that people have actually had the chance to watch it, it's not half bad. And then they sabotaged the ratings for it. So they're going to get a bunch of bad reviews from people who haven't watched it or people who were automatically poisoned against it because of their marketing ploys.
They had a really intrusive marketing tactic. If you have a smart TV, when you turn it on, if a Hulu account, if Amazon.
Well, it's an Amazon product. Yeah, if you opened it, it immediately went to.
But if you turn the TV on, not even clicking the app. If you turn the TV on, it says like Rings of Power. Like, dude.
That's to me, that's the least offensive of their marketing attempts for this. That's intrusive, but not offensive.
I think it's almost offensive to the people who made the show, saying that it can't succeed on its own merits. It has to be intertwined with all of this social messaging, and it has to be artificially propped up. I think it was good enough to succeed on its own. There are a lot of Lord of the Rings fans who didn't mind it, at least. They didn't dislike it. I don't think it was outstanding, like, on its own, if you're thinking of it as an addition to the canon of that universe. But what I'm seeing it for is, like, basically high-quality, high-production value fan fiction. And on that, if you're thinking of it that way, they did a good job. It's a good show.
I do not believe that it has the ability to stand on its own as a Lord of the Rings property.
No,
I believe that it
don't.
would have what it takes to stand on its own as a generic 90s-esque fantasy series. But that's not worth $1 billion.
No. And I didn't even see where the money was being spent on it. Like, that's an insane amount.
You said something in your review that I didn't understand until you said it. I had the feeling of like something's missing here, but I didn't know how to quite express it. The show is missing an incredible star power.
Yes.
Because it's super highly produced and it's very well scored in some senses. By the way, I've only caught glimpses when I've seen other people watch it. And you get these like dramatic music moments that it's like a freaking nobody.
They casted relatively nobodies.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe they thought we'll allocate that big budget to the special effects and the sets and costuming, which weren't bad at all. Yeah. It didn't look cheap, but it definitely didn't look like $500 million worth.
Nope.
And then they also spent like the equivalent of half that budget on just the rights to the show, to make the show alone.
$250 million.
Yikes.
That's more than half of what they spent on the show.
Yep. I do want to point out that they do now have a process in order to prevent reviews from getting through, which says in its existence confirmed by Variety that from an Amazon representative on September 2nd, after users of all opinions toward the series noticed that their criticisms were not being automatically listed under the Rings of Power. The company's new system now requires 72 hours to pass after a film series premieres before users can leave its feedback. According to the trade news outlet, if a review is left within the first 3-day window, each critique is then evaluated to determine whether it's genuine or a forgery created by bot, troll, or other breed of digital goblin.
That's crazy that they only say critique, because positive reviews can be bots too.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I'm also going to point out that when the people in charge of this decide what is and what is not critique or criticism,
Right.
I have a sneaking suspicion that we all know exactly which ones will be labeled bot, goblin, or whatever else their cutesy language was trying to convey.
What if it's not a bot? If it's a genuine review that's negative, it's mixed with things they think are invalid criticisms and valid ones.
Yep.
They're just going to paint with a broad brush and throw it out. And it's so censorious, and it's embarrassing for the people who made it that they can't openly receive criticism on what they made.
The issue with this is like it's half a good idea, because I kind of agree with the fact of perhaps putting a 72-hour window for any review.
That's a long time.
It's a
though.
long time.
Well, let's just say 48 or 24.
First of all, that gives them the chance to get their product out there without any pushback through its largest marketing period, right?
Well, if they do a big stinker, then,
No,
they
that means
have
that
to hold it
people-
even more.
That means that people have to watch it without being able to comment on it, which would normally prevent people from watching it if it's crap. It's the same thing that they do when a movie comes out, right? When a new film is coming out for release, they have what are called basically holds on reviews. So you're embargoed and you're not allowed to review a movie, release your review until a certain time. The better a movie is, the farther out they allow the embargo to be lifted. So a good movie will have a 2 week will be left off the embargo 2 weeks early. So you have 2 weeks of reviews, which give people a chance to decide whether they want to go see this movie or not. If a movie is really crappy, that embargo goes all the way up until the point of release, because they want to make sure as few people as possible get a chance to see those negative reviews and hopefully stave them off from watching the product.
But all of the early reviews for Rings of Power were, of course, because they're early access, extremely positive. Mm-hmm. And I think this 72-hour hold on viewership being able to review the show is censorious and unfair, because it's essentially saying like only the news outlets with credibility get to speak on the merits of this work.
Yeah, because they know that those are the ones that are going to walk in lockstep with what
And
they
ordinary
believe.
people are not allowed to do the same thing.
Okay, so if I could just give a little example as to why. So I don't like the fact that they pick which reviews they like and which ones they don't like. But I just want to give an example of why I somewhat agree with this in a way. So I'm into gaming, as you guys know, and there's a lot of Discords for games. And there is one for a specific game I play called Master Duel that it charges, I think it's $5 a month or a Twitch subscription, that you can have the Amazon subscription. And in that particular Discord, you can have the best conversations about strategy and about actual, tactics. Whereas all the other ones, they're all essentially lowest common denominator memes. And there is something to be said about putting a little bit of a barrier of entry between the review, be it, or the content, and the person. If it were just like...
Does that game live and die by the numbers it gets upon its premiere?
But the barrier to entry for reviewing Rings of Power is that you're paying Amazon. You already are a paying customer for Amazon Prime. That's the barrier to entry, I think.
But wouldn't you agree that right now, the way the world is, everyone is divided on the side, and a bunch of people gave this a negative review without watching it?
I believe
That's
that just as many people
true.
gave a good review without watching it. Because,
Really?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
don't know if it's just as much. I think they really went heavy with the marketing, and it was terrible, and it did a disservice to the show, because upon watching it, we did find out that it at least it wasn't bad. It was average or maybe slightly above average.
I would say average as a show, bad as an adaptation of someone's work.
A lot of people, I think, were deliberately propagandized to hate the show because it would encourage like hate watching and just generally more attention on it. So yeah, I think there were possibly more negative reviews from people who didn't watch it than positive.
The best thing you can do in this respect especially for any type of hyper partisan TV show. It's weird to call it partisan, but it is a weirdly partisan
Sadly,
issue.
that's something that you have to consider.
Would be to negate and always ignore the 1s and the 10s or the 1s and the 5s if it's a 5-star rating system, and go by the stuff that falls closer to the middle. Is where you'll find actual intelligent reviews. But in the end, people don't read these reviews anyways. It really is just a marketing means. And this started back when television shows and movies started using Rotten Tomatoes fresh rating as a marketing tool. Right? They would put that the show was certified fresh, the movie was certified fresh on their branding to let you know that it was a product worth watching. Okay.
And what we were talking about earlier is that I don't think there is big competitor to Rotten Tomatoes in that sense, because if you come up with an alternative place where people can review and not be censored, then the clientele it attracts will be more like they will be skewed or biased in a certain direction because they can't voice their opinions on Rotten Tomatoes, right?
The best thing I think you can do is use IMDb. Seems to have a more honest review system for their. They seem to fall closer to the middle, and a lot of people like CinemaScore as opposed to Rotten Tomatoes. But we're not even talking about Rotten Tomatoes here. We're talking about Amazon's actual reviews of the show on Amazon. So they also rolled this out early for a League of Their Own premiere, which was, of course, something that never needed to be made in the original League of Their Own, never needed to be improved upon, but what have you. They also spent $50 million British pounds per episode. I don't know what that equals out to in US dollars. I think it was like 57 million.
If it's euros, then it's about equal.
No,
not sure about pounds though.
I think it's British pounds. So somebody could let us know. So $50 million an episode. And I really do think that money could have gone to hiring better actors. Toss Galadriel off the side of the ship.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to bring up your hatred for Galadriel again because I brushed upon this in the episode where we reviewed it, but I guess you didn't catch my point totally. A man saved her life. Mm-hmm. The man she was with on the raft. What was her name? What was his name?
I had it up here. The character's name was
played by Charlie Vickers.
Halbrand.
Halbrand was the man that he's like a human running from his past. Their destinies intertwine. But anyway, she falls into the water and he saves her life. I was saying,
yes, he does.
That's an example that I can point to where she is not the Mary Sue or the stony, invincible character that you are criticizing her for being. I did not say she was invincible.
I said that it wasn't believable, and I said she's a charisma vacuum.
Okay, and an example that does support what you were saying is when the snow troll, or was it like a snow goblin,
she cut all its
came
joints,
out of she
stabs without looking at it. That was bad too.
All of the other elves fail completely to fight this snow troll, and she does it single-handedly in front of all of them and jumps up on a sword to attack it. That definitely could have been portrayed as a team effort, but they wanted to make Galadriel the awesome solo hero in that one.
My criticism isn't her being overpowered. My criticism is she's unlikable and she has no charisma while performing the role she was given. I just don't like the character.
Do you think Cate Blanchett did a better job of seeming warm and sociable?
I don't know if that's necessarily it. I know that I buy Cate Blanchett as a better actress than this lady.
Because in the timeline, maybe it makes more sense that closer to the period where she experienced the most trauma, that she would be more weathered and disillusioned than she is later on, thousands of years later.
I just don't like that character.
I'm just going to fight against your hatred for Galadriel no matter what.
But
I do still, I favor Nori overall.
Nori and Bronwyn all the way.
Not Bronwyn.
Yes, Bronwyn.
Just Nori.
Nope, Bronwyn too.
You just think that Bronwyn's hot.
I do. The actress is va-va-voom, as they say.
Va-va-voom.
So beyond that, so we're looking at the scores here. It has since risen. I almost said Rosen. 39% audience score to 20,310 reviews. To me, 20,000. Now I could be wrong. That seems extremely low, which tells me
for 25 million
for Tolkien. Yes.
I don't know. A lot of people just turn something on and they don't really care what it is, right?
I don't think you watch.
And a lot of the people watching it are not familiar with the Peter Jackson films or the books.
What qualifies as a view as well? Is it if you click on it? Is
We
it
don't
a
know
view?
about watch time. You're right.
Watch time is Netflix, and a lot of them advertise by watch time, minutes watched. They did the same thing with Reacher. They advertised it by, or I'm sorry, not Reacher, by the Terminal List. They advertised by however many billion minutes of watch time that it accrued, and that's a very common one. I don't know if they use Samba TV for that, but I think Disney does. We'll probably get more information for that as it comes out. But the sad fact is you're never going to know. They could make up any number.
Right.
But they have all the numbers and they safeguard them so that they can cleverly twist them around for marketing purposes.
And they
if you
will
knew
never...
the total number of viewers, period, that clicked on it, and the minutes watch time, then you could average out how long did people watch this before clicking it off.
A lot of the complaints I saw was people just being bored. You know, like
Yeah.
for me, I like putting stuff on in the background. I had to rewatch. I watched 2 shows this weekend. Which, by the way, since I'm being a downer right now, I'm going to give you 2 shows that you should go and watch right now.
right.
One is Whitechapel, which was at least the very first season of Whitechapel, which is a very interesting telling of a police department in modern day Whitechapel in the UK looking for a Jack the Ripper copycat killer. What it lacks in actual coherent story, it makes up extremely well for in atmosphere and made for TV violent, like gore, not violence, but gore. It's very unapologetic in the images it shows, and it's very, very good. And you should also watch Shetland, which is, I believe, Scottish. It's either Scottish or Irish. You have a very hard time understanding what any of them say most of the time, but if you put the subtitles on, it is really, really good. And what it lacks in positivity, it makes up for in atmosphere and ambiance, meaning that you feel like you're in this small town. And both of those, which were operating on a far smaller budget and were TV shows back in the early 2010s, I would ask you to watch that before you watch the new Lord of the Rings. That is my
Sounds-
Have you
personal opinion.
continued watching The Patient?
I watched the episode last night, but not closely enough to review. You'd have to watch it. I'd have to watch it
Okay.
again to review.
And how do you think Rings of Power did atmosphere-wise? The ambiance.
It feels empty and bland to me, but that's because
I
it's
didn't like
mostly
that much
CGI.
either.
That's because it's all CGI. The 2 shows that I just mentioned use almost no computer-generated imagery at all. You just happen to film in this beautiful location for the show for Shetland, and for the other one, it's filmed almost entirely at night. And it's very dark and grimy and dirty, and it's supposed to fit that tone, right? So they do a better job of translating what they were trying to portray from camera to audience better than I believe Rings of Power does. But that's because Rings of the Power... I understand these aren't like one-to-one comparisons.
Yeah.
They're not the same genre. They're not the same type of show. They're definitely not in the same scope. But I'm just saying that if a lot of the people watching this podcast are going to say they're not watching it because they don't feel that they marketed the show properly, they feel that it's an embarrassment to Tolkien's work, I would recommend those 2 shows, which are both, I believe, on Hulu.
Okay.
So Whitechapel and I'm sorry. Shetland is on BritBox, which is easily my new favorite streaming service.
Sounds
All British.
dangerously
Fox.
close to Chetland, and that would be an incredible show.
Shetland would be even better.
Imagine
But BritBox is my new favorite. Yes, and all UK shows.
only on Walmart Plus.
Wouldn't that be great?
It will.
Shetland would be
Hey,
all on all.
look
on
at me.
Walmart
It
Plus.
will.
It will.
I'm betting everything on Walmart Plus.
So, and if you were worried about somebody with a voice of importance criticizing Rings of Power, Elon Musk said that Tolkien is currently rolling over, turning in his grave because of how bad he thought.
Hey, I just want to say, I said that first. Elon Musk is totally copying me.
He's following you. He's
Lydia's
probably got
bestie.
He's probably got a sock account that he uses to follow you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're like somebody of that scale, like
He's one of the super chatters.
that would
for
be
sure.
amazing. But when you think about it, like when you reach that level of fame, who you follow actually becomes kind of a commodity. So you have to have sock accounts so that you can follow the weird people.
Right.
Well, like they go through and they find celebrities and they look for. Remember after like
That's lame though. If they generally like you, but their
Well,
opinion
They're
is that
two-faced, so
yeah
they won't follow.
Remember after Rittenhouse got off and he was like he got his Twitter account back and he was liking nothing but
But porn stars?
but porn. Yes.
It's kind of charming to not understand the internet to that degree.
At 18. Yes. Well, you know, he's like, I don't care. It's fine. But basically to me, this is more, I'm still happy to review the show. I'm happy to hate on Galadriel all the way up until episode 8. I am also happy to have her change my mind. I am not so close-minded that she can't change my mind. I do believe that her being not being completely overpowered and getting saved by the one dude is a sign in the right direction. But I don't think that the backstory they've given that character and the way she's portraying it lends itself to getting better. I think it only lends itself to getting worse. That's just my personal opinion. I am happy to review it. Maybe we do it as a Podluck segment since we can't expect
all our guests to know.
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't mind. Like, it's like they ask the questions that not everyone else wants to. Plus, a lot of the people in the chat are talking about, like, you know, they're happy we're watching it, so they don't have to. So maybe our guests can be like, oh, thank gosh, you're watching it so that I don't have to be the one to watch that show. So.
I think that what differentiates us from the extremes on both ends, the extremely positive reviews and extremely negative, is that neither of us are intense fans of Lord of the Rings, and neither of us are ideologues who wanted it to accomplish some kind of social agenda for us.
Well, that's even better, though.
Give up on that. That's never going to happen.
Of course.
Not in the way that I would like to see these things go. That's never going to happen.
Because although Lord of the Rings ideologues that I know on Facebook, all they do is criticize it nonstop and then be like 9 out of 10.
Yeah, but
it's like
what?
It's like it's abysmal. The acting's horrible. The scenery, they're not respecting the lore. 9 out of 10. And I'm like, how is everything you said congruent with your review?
People who overlap in both groups, like the big fans of Lord of the Rings who were expecting a lot, and
don't want to get called out for criticizing.
Who don't want to seem like they have the wrong reasons for disliking it.
Yeah, basically.
That's crazy.
I think basically they want this to be the new Fast and Furious, our favorite movie. And
why?
Because they just want to keep their content. Okay, you know, there's like a brand of Star Wars fans. They just want their stupid Star Wars slop all the time. It's like, oh my god, the lightsabers, and they just want it all the time. And there's that breed of people that like Lord of the Rings. I don't understand either, you know, but they just want the content to keep on coming.
Elon Musk says almost every male character so far is a coward, a jerk, or both. He obviously hasn't been watching much TV at all because that's how every male character is on TV
I don't think that's even true.
I don't which character what? I mean...
how is Arendir fitting into that description?
He's the one character that's not, right?
How's Durin fitting that description?
He might not have made it to episode 2.
You know, like, I don't think that's valid.
Durin and his wife were like my favorite part of it, but that's because they weren't in any type of battle or anything. I just enjoyed the relationship between the husband and the wife, and then the other character.
I understand why you'd say that maybe about Elrond. They trying to convince, or any of the men trying to convince Galadriel to turn back, or telling her to not go forward and criticize the king.
Those are important male characters. But I want to point out also that this show could have also just not been Lord of the Rings and been fine, but it would never get that budget.
They can't piggyback.
So they lose either way. And here's the other question: do you honestly believe that this will retain its viewership? I do not.
25 million?
I don't believe it retains its viewership. I think it ends up... I think that House of the Dragon ends on a far higher note than the show does.
Apparently that last episode was a banger.
House of the Dragon.
Yes.
Yeah. The first two were rated like 8.8, I believe, and the last one's like a 10 or something.
People are saying like Matt Smith deserves like an Oscar or like an Emmy for his portrayal in that one. He doesn't have any lines. All I'm saying is like there's a lot more goodwill for the House of the Dragon right now. The Jeremy Jahns, who is known for being very, very, very fair in his reviews and also being like a sort of man of the people, despised the Lord of the Rings, but this one, because it's all the same. They're rating it based on the disrespect it's showing to Tolkien's work, not on its own merits as a show. But they shouldn't have to make that distinction. That's not on the reviewer to make that distinction. That's on the studio to do that, and they're not willing to do that. So that's my problem with it. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.